My shitty cousin fucked every boyfriend at family weddings. Until I brought my new guy who's actually her probation officer. My cousin is a straight-up predator who used to hook up with every boyfriend I ever brought to a family wedding, right up until the day I finally showed up with a guy who happened to be her probation officer. My name's Lauren, and before anyone asks, yes, I actually did this. And no, I don't feel even a little bit bad about it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. Growing up, my cousin Amber was always the golden child in our family. She had flawless blonde hair, a bright smile that lit up a room, and perfect grades that our grandmother loved to brag about nonstop. Everyone adored her. She could do no wrong. But there was one thing nobody ever wanted to talk about. Amber had a habit at weddings. A very specific habit. At every single family wedding, without exception, Amber would somehow end up kissing my boyfriend. Not a quick, harmless peck. I mean full-on making out. I'm talking coat closets, dark corners behind the venue, parked cars. Anywhere she could drag them off alone. The first time it happened, I was 19. His name was Jake, and we'd been together for 8 months. I was deeply, hopelessly in love with him in that intense, naive way you only experience when you're young and don't know any better. My cousin Olivia was getting married, and the wedding was this big, beautiful outdoor thing at a vineyard in Napa. Jake wore a suit for the first time in his life, and I remember looking at him and thinking he might actually be someone I could build a future with. During the reception, Jake told me he needed some fresh air. He'd been drinking and said he felt a little lightheaded. I was busy dancing with my Aunt Margaret, so I didn't think much of it and just nodded. About 20 minutes later, I realized he still hadn't come back, so I went looking for him. That's when I found them, behind the wine storage building. Amber's hands were tangled in his hair. Jake's hands were wrapped around her waist. They were kissing like nothing else in the world mattered. When I made a sound, they jumped apart. Jake looked startled and confused. Amber looked calm, almost pleased. She gave me this look I'll never forget. No guilt, no shame, just a small smug smile. "Oh my God, Lauren," she said, touching her lips like she was wiping away proof. "I'm so sorry." He came on to me. I swear. I tried to push him away, but he wouldn't stop. Jake immediately launched into apologies. He said he was drunk. He said he didn't know how it happened. He said Amber was lying and that she dragged him out there. I stood there in my lavender silk bridesmaid dress, $300 I didn't have, and felt like my whole body had gone numb. Then my mom showed up. Then Olivia, the bride. Then her new husband. Before I knew it, half the wedding was watching me cry. Here's the thing about family dynamics. When you're the quiet cousin and the other one is charming and magnetic, people make their choice fast. Everyone believed Amber. On the drive home, my mom told me Jake must have misunderstood her friendliness. She said Amber would never do something like that on purpose. She wasn't that kind of girl. I broke up with Jake that night. He sent me 47 texts over the next week. I blocked his number and tried to move forward. But that smile Amber gave me, it stuck with me. That look said she'd taken something from me, and she knew it. The second time it happened, I tried to convince myself the first time had been a fluke. Maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe Jake really had been the one at fault. Maybe I'd been wrong. His name was Ryan. I was 22, and we'd been together for a year. We were even talking about moving in together. My uncle Raymond was getting married to his longtime partner in a beautiful ceremony in Portland. Ryan and I drove up together, singing along to terrible radio songs and talking about our future like everything was solid. The wedding was perfect. The vows made me cry. Ryan held my hand the entire time. At the reception, I went to the bathroom. When I came back, Ryan wasn't at our table. I checked the bar, the dance floor, the patio outside. I finally found him in a hallway near the kitchen. Amber had him pinned against the wall, her leg wrapped around his hip, their mouths locked together. This time I didn't gasp. I just stood there. When they noticed me, Amber did the same routine. She touched her lips and looked at me with wide, innocent eyes. "Lauren, I'm so sorry. He told me you two were having problems. He said you were on a break." "We're not on a break," I said quietly. Ryan stumbled over his words. He said he didn't know how it happened. He said she grabbed him and he was trying to push her away. I pointed out that his hands were on her ass. Once again, the family got involved. Once again, Amber cried and said Ryan had chased her. And once again, everyone believed her. Because Amber was Amber and I was just Lauren. Surely she wouldn't do this twice. My Aunt Lisa suggested gently that maybe I was choosing the wrong men. Maybe I needed to look at the common denominator. The common denominator wasn't me. It was Amber. But I had no proof. And after Ryan, I started doubting myself. Maybe they were right. Maybe every guy I dated just couldn't resist my cousin. The third time erased all doubt. His name was Michael. I was 25. We'd been together for 2 years, and 3 weeks before my cousin Michelle's wedding, he proposed. I wore my engagement ring proudly. A simple gold band with a tiny diamond he'd saved months to buy. I didn't even arrive with Michael that day. He had to work that morning, so he showed up just before the ceremony, kissed my cheek, and told me I looked beautiful. During cocktail hour, I was talking to my grandmother about wedding plans. Michael said he was heading to the bar. I watched him walk there. I watched him. 15 minutes later, I went to find him. They were in the coat room. Amber's dress was pulled up. Michael's jacket was on the floor. I didn't cry. I just stared. Amber saw me first, and this time she didn't bother hiding it. She smiled and shrugged. "I'm sorry, Lauren," she said, without an ounce of regret. Michael tried to explain. He said she dragged him in there. He said he was trying to leave, but I saw his hand on her thigh. I saw the lipstick on his collar. I took off my engagement ring, dropped it on the floor between them and walked out. That was 2 years ago. Since then, I've stopped bringing dates to family weddings. I go alone. I sit at the singles table. I smile politely while Amber shows up with new boyfriends and everyone fawns over how perfect she is. I stopped dating seriously. I stopped trusting anyone enough to introduce them to my family. My therapist says I have trust issues. My best friend Natalie says I should confront Amber directly. But how do you even confront someone when the entire family is convinced she's basically an angel? About 3 months ago, I accidentally learned something that changed everything. I was sitting in a coffee shop near my apartment, working on my laptop, when I overheard 2 women talking at the table next to me. At first, I wasn't paying attention, just background noise, until one of them said Amber's name. It's not exactly common where I live, but I figured it was probably a coincidence. Then the woman said, "Yeah, Amber Westbrook. Probation. Can you believe it?" She always seemed so put together. I froze. Amber Westbrook. My cousin. On probation. I know I shouldn't have listened, but I leaned in anyway. One of the women was a court clerk, venting to her friend about her day. She mentioned fraud charges, court dates, mandatory community service, and regular check-ins with a probation officer. My perfect cousin. On probation. I went home and did what any completely reasonable person would do. I internet stalked her relentlessly. It took some digging, but I eventually found the court records. 6 months earlier, Amber had been charged with credit card fraud. She'd been using fake cards to buy designer clothes, expensive jewelry. Basically all the things that made her look like she had her life perfectly together. She pleaded guilty. Because it was her first offense, she avoided jail and was sentenced to probation instead. According to the record, she cried in court. Of course she did. Nobody in the family knew. She'd kept it completely hidden. I sat alone in my apartment, staring at those court documents on my screen, and felt something inside me shift. For the first time in years I had leverage. I just didn't know yet what I was going to do with it. Then my cousin Hannah announced her engagement. Wedding in 3 months. The invitation showed up in my mailbox. A thick cream-colored envelope with gold lettering. I almost tossed it straight into the trash. I'd already told myself I was done with family weddings, but then I thought about Amber. I pictured her walking into Hannah's wedding with some new guy on her arm, flashing that flawless smile, probably already sizing up which groomsman she'd go after. And that's when the thought hit me. What if I brought someone she couldn't touch? What if I brought her probation officer? The idea was completely unhinged, absolutely insane. And once it lodged itself in my brain, I couldn't shake it. I spent 2 full days trying to talk myself out of it. It was petty. It was dramatic. It might even be illegal. But the more I thought about it, the more it felt right. First, I needed to figure out who her probation officer actually was. After more online digging, I found his name. Officer Ethan Brennan. He worked for the county probation department. I even found a photo from some community outreach event. He looked like he was in his mid-30s, dark hair, serious expression, the kind of guy who didn't mess around. Now I just had to meet him. I'm not proud of what I did next. I called the probation office and pretended I was interested in volunteer opportunities. That's how I learned when Officer Brennan would be at the county building for public office hours. I showed up. The county building smelled like old paper and hopelessness. I waited in the lobby for 40 minutes before I finally saw him walking down the hallway, arms full of folders, looking exhausted. "Officer Brennan," I called out. He stopped and turned. "Yes." I walked over, my heart pounding. "Hi, my name's Lauren. I know this is going to sound strange, but I need to talk to you about one of your probationers, Amber Westbrook." His expression immediately hardened. "I can't discuss active cases with. She's my cousin," I cut in. "And I'm not asking for details about her case. I'm asking you for something else. Something that might sound completely crazy." He studied me for a second. "I'm listening." I took a breath. "There's a family wedding in 3 months. Amber will be there. And I want you to come with me as my date." The silence was brutal. "I'm sorry, what?" he said. "I know how it sounds," I rushed on. "But please hear me out. Amber has been sabotaging my relationships for years. Every time I bring a boyfriend to a family wedding, she goes after him. She's done it 3 times. Different guys, same result. Everyone thinks I'm exaggerating or that I pick terrible men, but it's her. She does it on purpose." His face stayed neutral. "And you believe bringing her probation officer as your date will, what exactly?" "I think it'll make her uncomfortable enough that she won't try anything," I said. "And honestly, after everything she's put me through, I think being uncomfortable is the bare minimum she deserves." He shifted the folders in his arms. "Lauren, what you're suggesting involves my professional position. That's not appropriate." "I'm not asking you to threaten her or even mention probation," I said quickly. "Just come as my guest. If she feels weird because you're there, that's on her." He paused. Why would I agree to this? It was a fair question. I thought about it. "Because I'll donate $500 to the probation department's youth outreach program." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "You're trying to bribe me." "I'm offering to support a good cause in exchange for a few hours of your time," I said. "You don't have to do anything questionable. Just show up, eat some cake, maybe dance with me once or twice. That's it." He studied me for a long moment. "This is the most unusual request I've ever received." "So is that a no?" I asked. "I didn't say that." My heart jumped. You'll think about it? I'll think about it, he said carefully. No promises. He gave me his email, told me to send over the wedding details, and said he'd let me know within a week. I walked out of that building feeling like I'd either done something brilliant or unbelievably stupid. 5 days later I got an email. Against my better judgment, I'll attend the wedding with you. Ground rules apply. We maintain appropriate boundaries. I won't discuss Miss Westbrook's probation case. If asked why I'm there, we tell the truth, that you invited me as your date. I will not lie or mislead anyone. If you agree, send the wedding details. I read the email 3 times. Then I transferred $500 to the youth outreach program and sent him the information. This was actually happening. The next 2.5 months felt surreal. I exchanged a few more emails with Officer Brennan. Ethan told me to call him by his first name whenever we weren't in any kind of official setting. He asked about the dress code, and I forwarded him the wedding invitation so we'd be on the same page. We decided to meet for coffee about a week before the wedding, mostly to make sure we could actually hold a normal conversation without it being painfully awkward. In the meantime, I RSVP'd to Hannah's wedding with a +1. My mom called almost immediately. You're bringing someone? She asked, clearly surprised. Who is he? A friend, I said vaguely. His name's Ethan. A friend or a boyfriend? We're figuring it out. I could hear the smile in her voice. I'm really glad you're not letting what happened with Michael stop you from putting yourself out there. I felt a brief stab of guilt. Then I thought about Amber, and that feeling disappeared. I didn't tell anyone else in the family. Not my dad. Not my sister Claire. Not even Natalie. I was afraid that if I said it out loud I'd lose my nerve and back out. The coffee meeting with Ethan ended up being easier than I expected. He showed up in jeans and a button-down, looking far less intimidating than he had in the county building. We talked about normal everyday stuff. I told him about my job as a graphic designer. He told me why he became a probation officer. My brother got arrested when he was a teenager, Ethan said, stirring sugar into his coffee. The officer assigned to him actually cared. Helped him get into trade school. He's a welder now and doing really well. That guy changed his life. That's why I do this. Another wave of guilt hit me. Ethan was genuinely a good person, and I was dragging him into my family mess for revenge. You're having second thoughts, he said. How can you tell? You've been staring at your coffee for 3 minutes without taking a sip. I looked up at him. Is what I'm doing awful? He thought about it for a moment. Do you want the honest answer? Yes. I think your cousin probably deserves to feel uncomfortable, he said carefully. But I also think you should be ready for this to not play out the way you're imagining. Revenge almost never feels as satisfying as people expect. You sound like my therapist. He gave a small smile. I spend a lot of time around therapists, but I already agreed to go, so we'll see it through. Just promise me one thing. What's that? If things start to get messy, we leave. I'm not getting pulled into a huge family blow-up. Deal. We shook hands. His grip was firm and warm. The week before the wedding, I went dress shopping with my sister Claire. She's 3 years younger than me, still in college, and totally unaware of most of the Amber drama since she'd been studying abroad when it all went down. So who's this Ethan guy? She asked as I tried on a deep blue dress. Just someone I've been seeing. Mom says he's a friend. We're still figuring it out. Claire grinned. Is he hot? I thought about Ethan's serious eyes and the way he smiled over coffee. He's interesting. That's not an answer. Fine. Yes. He's attractive. Claire hesitated. Amber's going to be at this wedding. I went still. I wasn't around for the Ryan thing or the Michael thing, she continued softly. But I was there when Jake happened. I remember the way Amber looked at you afterward, like she'd won something. Her voice dropped. I've always thought she did it on purpose. I just couldn't prove it. I turned toward her. You believe me? Of course I believe you, Claire said. Amber's always been weirdly competitive with you. Like she has to prove she's better at everything, even stealing your boyfriends. My eyes stung. Why didn't you ever say anything? I was 17, she said. Nobody listens to 17-year-olds. And by the time I could have spoken up, you'd stopped bringing guys around. She squeezed my shoulder. If this Ethan guy matters to you, you should warn him about Amber. I already did, I said, which wasn't technically a lie. I bought the blue dress. Cost more than I should have spent, but I wanted to feel confident. I wanted Amber to see me walk in with someone and feel something, jealousy, worry, anything. The night before the wedding, I barely slept. I played out every possible scenario in my head. Amber cornering Ethan. Amber trying to kiss him. Ethan announcing who he was in front of everyone. My entire family finding out what I'd done. At 2 in the morning, I almost texted Ethan to cancel everything. Almost. The wedding was held at a fancy downtown hotel with crystal chandeliers and marble floors. I met Ethan in the lobby. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit that fit him perfectly. When he saw me in the blue dress, something flickered across his face. You look really nice, he said. So do you. We stood there awkwardly for a second. Ready? He asked. No, I said. But let's do it anyway. The ceremony took place in a ballroom on the 2nd floor. We walked in together, and I immediately felt eyes on us. My mom spotted me first and lit up when she saw I wasn't alone. She waved enthusiastically. Then I saw Amber. She was seated 3 rows ahead with her current boyfriend, some guy I didn't recognize. She wore a pink dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled. When she heard the murmur of people noticing us, she turned, and her gaze landed on Ethan. For just a moment, her flawless composure slipped. Her eyes widened. Her mouth fell open slightly. Then she recovered, smiled brightly, and turned back toward the front. My heart was pounding. Ethan leaned in and whispered. She saw me. I know, I whispered back. We took seats near the back as the ceremony began. Hannah looked beautiful, tearing up as she read her vows. Her fiancé watched her like she was the center of the universe. It was sincere and sweet and exactly how a wedding should feel. I tried to focus on that instead of on Amber's back a few rows ahead. After the ceremony, everyone moved into the reception hall for cocktail hour. Guests mingled, drinks flowed, and my mother made a beeline straight for us. Lauren, and this must be Ethan, she said, hugging me before extending her hand to him. I'm Susan, Lauren's mom. It's so nice to meet you. Please call me Susan, she added quickly. How did you two meet? I prepared for this. Through work, I said smoothly. Ethan was consulting on a project. Ethan nodded. Not technically a lie. Everything we said was true, just framed very carefully. My mom beamed. Well, I'm just so happy Lauren finally brought someone to one of these, my mom said loudly. After everything that happened with Michael, she stopped herself. But that's all in the past now. More relatives drifted over. My dad shook Ethan's hand firmly and asked what he did for work. Ethan answered that he worked for the county, which was completely true. Aunt Margaret gave him a long approving look from head to toe. Then my cousin Olivia, whose wedding had been ground zero for the Jake disaster, pulled me aside. He seems nice, she whispered. A lot better than Jake. Just be careful, okay? Especially with Amber here. So I wasn't imagining things. Other people had noticed too. That helped more than I expected. We made it through cocktail hour without any explosions. Ethan turned out to be great at small talk. Friendly without trying too hard. He asked my relatives about themselves, laughed politely at my uncle's awful jokes, and even complimented my grandmother's antique brooch. You're really good at this, I murmured as we walked toward our table. At what? He asked. Pretending to be my date. He gave me a strange look. Who says I'm pretending? Before I could respond, Amber appeared out of nowhere. She slid up beside us like a shark that had spotted prey, her boyfriend trailing a step behind her. Up close I could see how tight her smile was. Lauren, she said sweetly. I didn't know you were seeing someone. It's new, I replied. Her gaze shifted to Ethan. I'm Amber, Lauren's cousin. Ethan, he said calmly. He didn't offer his hand. And what do you do, Ethan? She asked. I work for the county. Doing what? There was an edge in her voice now. She knew something was off. She just hadn't figured out what yet. Social services, Ethan said smoothly. Helping people get their lives back on track. Amber's smile stiffened. How nice. Her boyfriend cleared his throat. I'm Logan. We exchanged stiff pleasantries while Amber stared at Ethan like she was trying to place him. I could practically see the gears spinning in her head. Then the wedding coordinator announced it was time for everyone to take their seats. Amber and Logan walked away, and I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. She definitely recognizes me, Ethan said quietly. But she can't say anything without explaining how she knows me. He looked at me seriously. This is risky, Lauren. I know. Our table sat near the center of the room, surrounded by Hannah's college friends and a few distant relatives I barely knew. Dinner was salmon or chicken, and the speeches were emotional. Hannah's maid of honor cried through her entire toast. I kept glancing at Amber's table. She barely touched her food and leaned close to Logan, whispering constantly. He looked confused and irritated. Once the dancing started, Ethan surprised me again. He could actually dance. We swayed to a slow song I didn't recognize, and for a brief moment I forgot about everything else. The revenge. Amber. The whole probation officer plan. Thank you for doing this, I said quietly. You've already thanked me, he replied. I know, but... Lauren, he said, looking down at me. I'm here because I wanted to be. The donation was nice, but I would have come anyway. Why? I asked. He hesitated. Because what your cousin did to you was cruel. And you looked like someone who needed someone on her side for once. Something warm and dangerous settled in my chest. Then I spotted Amber heading straight for us. Incoming, I muttered. Ethan didn't even turn. Let her. Amber tapped my shoulder. Mind if I cut in? It wasn't really a question. She stepped between us before I could answer. You don't mind, right, Lauren? She said sharply. I just want to get to know your new boyfriend. Ethan glanced at me. I gave a small nod and stepped back. I watched them dance. Watched Amber lean in close and whisper things I couldn't hear. Watched Ethan's face stay completely neutral. My sister Claire slid up beside me. What's she doing? Being Amber. Want me to interrupt? Not yet. After what felt like forever, but was probably only 2 minutes, Ethan excused himself and came back to me. Amber stood alone on the dance floor, clearly annoyed. What did she say? I asked. She asked if we'd met before, he said. I told her I just have one of those faces. Then she asked exactly where I work. I said the county building on 5th Street. He paused. Then she asked if I wanted to get some air with her later. My stomach dropped. So she hit on you? Yes. What did you say? That I was exactly where I wanted to be. Claire snorted. I officially like this guy. The rest of the reception blurred together. Amber kept watching us from across the room. Logan looked increasingly irritated. My mom kept giving me enthusiastic thumbs-ups from her table, clearly thrilled I'd finally brought someone to a wedding. Around 10 o'clock I went to the bathroom. When I came out, Amber was waiting in the hallway. "We need to talk," she said. My heart started racing. "About what?" "About Ethan," she said. "I know who he is. He's my date. He's my probation officer." There it was, out in the open. I could have denied it, pretended I didn't know what she meant, but I was done pretending. "Yes," I said. "He is." Her face drained of color, then flushed red. "Are you insane? Do you know what you've done bringing him here? You mean bringing my date to a family wedding? I don't see the issue. He could violate my probation for this." "For what?" I asked calmly. "You haven't done anything wrong. You've behaved yourself all night." I stepped closer. "Unless you were planning on doing something wrong, like trying to kiss my date." Her mouth opened then shut. "This is entrapment," she snapped. "No, it isn't. It's me bringing someone to a wedding. Someone who happens to know about your criminal record." I let that sit. "The record you've been hiding from everyone. You can't tell them." "I don't need to," I said. "You're already terrified they'll find out." I smiled. Felt cruel. And it felt good. "How does it feel, Amber?" I asked softly. "To be the uncomfortable one for once?" "I could tell everyone what you did," she said. "That you brought my probation officer here to humiliate me." "Go ahead," I said. "Explain to the family why you have a probation officer. Explain the credit card fraud. Explain why you've been lying to everyone for 6 months." She stared at me, and for the first time in my life I saw real fear in Amber's eyes. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Because of Jake. And Ryan. And Michael," I whispered. "And every other time you decided to ruin something I cared about just because you could." My voice was shaking now and I didn't bother trying to steady it. "You made me think I was losing my mind," I said. "You made me doubt my own instincts. You took 3 relationships from me, and you smiled while you did it." "They wanted to kiss me," she said weakly. "No," I replied. "They didn't. I'd had years to think about this. Years to replay every detail, every moment, every excuse." "You waited until they were drunk," I said. "You separated them from everyone else. You manipulated the situation, and when it blew up you blamed them. Every single time." Tears streaked down her face now, cutting through her makeup. "I didn't mean to." "Yes, you did," I said firmly. "You meant all of it." We stood there in the hallway, years of resentment and hurt hanging thick between us. After a long pause, she finally asked, "Are you going to tell everyone?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "No," I said. "That's not why I brought Ethan here." She looked up at me. "I brought him so you'd feel what I felt," I continued. "So you'd spend one night knowing that someone could destroy your reputation with a single sentence. So you'd be too scared to pull your usual stunt." "So this was revenge," she said. "No," I replied. "This was justice." I walked past her and headed back toward the reception. Behind me, I heard her crying quietly. Ethan was waiting near our table. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said honestly. "I think it finally is." The rest of the night was actually good. Really good. I danced with Ethan. I danced with my sister. I danced with my dad. I drank champagne, ate wedding cake, and laughed at my uncle's absolutely awful dance moves. And every time I glanced over at Amber, she was sitting quietly at her table, not talking to anyone, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Around midnight, Ethan and I headed out together. The cool night air hit us as we reached the parking lot, and suddenly it felt real. The night was over. "Thank you," I said. "For everything." "You keep thanking me," he said, smiling. "Because I mean it." He hesitated. "Can I tell you a secret?" "Sure." "I had fun tonight," he said. "Even with all the weird stuff with your cousin. I actually had fun." "Me too." He paused again. "Would you want to do this again sometime? Without the revenge plot. Just dinner or something?" I stared at him. "Are you asking me out?" "I think I already took you on a date," he said. "I'm asking for a second one." "Isn't that ethically complicated?" I asked. "Given that you're connected to one of my family members?" "Amber's probation ends in 4 months," he said. "I can wait." My heart did something complicated. "You're willing to wait 4 months just to take me to dinner?" "I want to do this the right way," he said. "And the right way means no conflicts of interest." He pulled out his phone. "But there's nothing wrong with being friends in the meantime. Friends can text, right?" "Friends can text," I agreed, giving him my number. After he saved it, he looked at me seriously. "For what it's worth, I think you handled tonight really well. You had every reason to explode, to make a scene, to tell everyone what she did. But you didn't. You made your point and walked away." "My therapist would be proud," I said. "She should be." He walked me to my car and gave me a hug that lasted just a second longer than necessary. Then he got into his own car and drove off. I sat there for a while replaying the night. My phone buzzed. From my mom. "He seems wonderful, honey. I'm so happy for you." Then Claire. "Okay, that was the most badass thing I've ever seen. Tell me everything tomorrow." Then a number I didn't recognize. It was Amber. "I'm sorry. For all of it. I know you probably don't believe me, but I am. I'm getting help. Real help. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. Good luck. I didn't say I forgave her. I didn't say we were okay. I just wished her luck. Because I didn't bring Ethan to that wedding to forgive Amber. I brought him so I'd stop feeling powerless. So I could take back control of my own story. And it worked. 3 months later I got a text from Ethan. Amber Westbrook's probation officially ended today. Are you free Friday night? I was. We went to a small Italian place downtown. No family. No hidden motives. No games. Just dinner. And it was nice. Really nice. He told me about a kid he was working with who was turning his life around. I told him about a logo design I was especially proud of. We split tiramisu and argued lightheartedly about whether pineapple belongs on pizza. When he walked me to my car he kissed me. It was gentle and sweet and nothing like the kisses I'd seen Amber steal years ago. I've wanted to do that since the wedding, he admitted. I'm just patient. We officially started dating after that. I introduced him to Natalie, who immediately approved. We had dinner with my parents, and my mom whispered that she was so glad I'd found someone stable and mature. I never told them the full truth about how we met. Some things are better left unsaid. 6 months after Hannah's wedding, I ran into Amber at a coffee shop. It was awkward for about 10 seconds. I'm in therapy twice a week now, she said. That's good, I replied. She took a breath. My therapist says I have a pattern of sabotaging people I'm jealous of. She laughed, but it wasn't her polished laugh. It sounded fragile. I've been jealous of you since we were kids, she admitted. Of me? I asked. Yes, she said. People admire Amber because she's pretty and successful, but they like Lauren because you're kind and real. I wanted that. I just didn't know how to get it without tearing you down. She looked into her coffee. I know you probably don't care, but I wanted you to know I'm working on it. I thought about all the damage she'd caused, all the nights I'd cried, all the times I doubted myself. I hope it helps, I said, and I meant it. Not because I forgave her, not because we were suddenly close, but because I didn't want to carry that anger anymore. It was exhausting. A year after the wedding, Ethan and I moved in together. We adopted a cat named Waffles, who has terrible manners and no shame. We host dinners. We go to farmers markets on Sundays. We're happy. My family still doesn't know Ethan is a probation officer. They don't know Amber was on probation. And they don't know the real reason I brought him to that wedding. And honestly, I'm okay with that. Most people think Ethan and I met through work, which technically speaking isn't a lie. Claire knows the real story. I told her everything one night over a couple glasses of wine, and she laughed so hard she started crying. You're kind of devious, she said, clearly impressed. I never knew you had that in you. Honestly, I told her. Neither did I. Are you ever going to tell Mom and Dad? She asked. Maybe someday, I said. Or maybe never. I'm not sure it really matters. The truth is, I didn't bring Ethan to that wedding because I was hoping for a fairy tale ending. I brought him for closure. I brought him for the quiet satisfaction of watching Amber squirm for once. I brought him because I wanted to feel in control instead of always being the victim. But somewhere between cocktail hour, the slow dances, and that long conversation in the parking lot, something unexpected happened. Something real. I fell for the man I'd essentially hired to be my fake date. And 4 months later, once the ethical lines were cleared and there were no more conflicts of interest, he fell for me too. Last month, Hannah came over for dinner. Ethan was inside grilling vegetables while Hannah and I sat on the balcony, sipping wine as the sun went down. Can I ask you something? She said. Of course. That night at my wedding, she continued, when you showed up with Ethan. Did you know Amber was on probation? I watched her carefully. Why do you ask? Because I saw Amber's face when she saw him, Hannah said. And I saw her face after she talked to you in the hallway. She looked absolutely terrified. Hannah swirled her wine. So I did a little digging because I'm nosy, and I found out Ethan works for the probation department. She quickly added, I'm not judging you. After what Amber pulled with Jake at my wedding, she kind of had it coming. Hannah smiled. I just want to know, did you plan it? Or was it some wild coincidence? I thought about lying, but Hannah had always been one of my favorite cousins, and I was exhausted from keeping secrets. I planned it, I admitted. All of it. Yes. She stared at me for a second, then laughed. That's the most brilliant thing I've ever heard. We clinked our wine glasses together. You're not going to tell anyone, are you? I asked. Are you kidding? She said. This secret is way too good. I'm taking it to my grave. Then her expression softened. But seriously, Lauren, I'm proud of you. I'm glad you finally stood up to her. And I'm really glad you found Ethan. He's good for you. Yeah, I said. He really is. Ethan stepped out onto the balcony carrying a plate of grilled vegetables. He kissed the top of my head and sat beside me, completely unaware that Hannah and I had just dissected the origin story of our relationship. What are you two talking about? He asked. Wedding stories, Hannah said, shooting me a grin. Ah, he said. The best kind. We ate dinner as the sky darkened, talking and laughing, and that's when something clicked for me. For years I'd let Amber hurt me. I'd stayed stuck as the victim in my own story, forgetting that I had any control at all. That night at the wedding, standing in the hallway, watching Amber cry and realizing she was finally afraid of something I'd done, that had felt powerful. But this? Sitting on my balcony with Ethan and Hannah, eating good food, drinking wine, and feeling genuinely happy? This felt better than power. This felt like peace. My phone buzzed. A text from my mom. Cousin Sophie's engagement party next month. Are you and Ethan coming? I showed Ethan the message. What do you think? He asked. I think we go as a real couple this time, I said. No secret agendas. Works for me. Later that night, after Hannah left and we were getting ready for bed, Ethan asked, do you ever regret bringing me to Hannah's wedding the way you did? I took my time answering. No, I said finally. Maybe I should. Maybe it was petty or vindictive or not my proudest moment. But I don't regret it. Why not? Because it gave me you, I said. It gave me closure. And it forced Amber to face consequences for once in her life. I slid into bed beside him. She's in therapy now, actually, really working on herself. I don't know if that would have happened if I hadn't finally pushed back. He smiled. So you're taking credit for her personal growth? Absolutely not, I said. I'm taking credit for standing up for myself. What she does with that is her problem. He pulled me closer. You know, when you first approached me in that county building, I thought you were completely unhinged. I was, I said. But I was also brave. He laughed. Sometimes bravery and bad ideas look exactly the same. I fell asleep thinking about all the versions of myself I'd been. The heartbroken 19-year-old watching Jake kiss Amber. The devastated 22-year-old finding Ryan in the hallway. The broken 25-year-old dropping her engagement ring onto the floor. And finally, the 28-year-old who decided she'd had enough. I don't know if what I did was technically right. I don't know if involving someone's probation officer crosses an ethical line I should feel worse about. But I do know this. Amber never tried to kiss another one of my boyfriends. And Ethan turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. So maybe some revenge stories really do get happy endings. Or so I thought. Because 2 months after that conversation with Hannah, I got another text, this time from Amber. I'm getting married. I know we're not close, but you're still family. I'd like you to come. And I'd like to apologize properly in person. I stared at the message for a long time. Ethan leaned over my shoulder. What are you going to do? I honestly don't know. Want my advice? He asked. Always go. Not for her. For you. So you can close the chapter. He was right. Of course he was. So I RSVP'd. Yes. +1. 3 months later, Ethan and I walked into Amber's wedding together. I was wearing a deep burgundy dress, and Amber spotted us almost immediately. She smiled, but not her old polished smile. This one was real. She approached us during cocktail hour. Her fiancé stood beside her, a quiet man named Daniel who worked as a teacher and looked at Amber like she was something fragile and precious. Thank you for coming, Amber said. Both of you. Ethan nodded politely. Amber turned to me. I've been wanting to say this for a long time, she said. I'm sorry. For Jake. For Ryan. For Michael. For making you doubt yourself. For being cruel because I was jealous and didn't know how to handle my own issues. Okay, I said. I don't expect forgiveness, she continued. I don't even expect you to like me. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, and that I'm trying to be different now. Or at least I'm trying. Daniel squeezed Amber's hand gently. She really is trying, he said. I looked at Amber, really looked at her this time. She seemed different somehow. Softer. Less polished. More human. I appreciate you saying that, I told her honestly. And I hope things work out for you. I really do. She hesitated. Can I ask you something? Sure. That night at Hannah's wedding, she said carefully. When you brought Ethan, did you do it to hurt me? I considered lying, but there didn't seem to be any point anymore. Yes, I said. I did it to make you uncomfortable. I wanted you to feel what I felt. Did it work? I gave her a look. What do you think? She smiled sadly. It did. I was terrified the entire night. And afterward I realized I'd become someone I didn't even like. That's when I decided to get help. She paused. In a strange way, you bringing Ethan might have been the best thing that ever happened to me. I didn't know how to respond to that. Ethan cleared his throat. I think the ceremony's about to start. We headed toward the main room. As we walked away, Amber called out behind us. Lauren, she said. I turned. I'm really glad you're happy, she said softly. You deserve that. The ceremony was beautiful. Amber cried during her vows. Real tears that smeared her makeup. Daniel looked at her like she was the only person in the world. It was sweet and genuine, and nothing like the version of Amber I'd grown up with. People really can change. Maybe not completely. Maybe not always. But sometimes. At the reception, Ethan and I danced together, swaying to the music. I thought about all the weddings I'd been to over the years, and all the hurt I'd carried with me into those rooms. You okay? Ethan asked. Yeah, I said. I think I finally am. No regrets about bringing me to Hannah's wedding, he teased. Not a single one. Good, he said, pulling back just enough to look at me. Because I've been thinking. About what? What would you say if I told you I want to go to a lot more weddings with you? I laughed. Our families do throw a lot of them. That's not what I meant. My heart stopped. Ethan, I'm not proposing, he said quickly. Not yet, and definitely not at your cousin's wedding. That would be weird. He smiled. But someday soon I want to. I want you to be the bride. And I want to be the guy crying at the altar because I can't believe I got this lucky. I kissed him right there in the middle of Amber's reception. A long deep kiss that made my Aunt Margaret whistle from across the room. When we pulled apart, I saw Amber watching us. She lifted her glass slightly in a small toast and smiled. Not her old smug smile. Not her victorious smile. Just a real happy one. I raised my glass back, then leaned in and whispered to Ethan, "Ask me later. When we're alone. Ask me and I'll say yes." He grinned. "That's a pretty big spoiler." "I know." He kissed me again. "Fair warning, when I do ask, I'm doing it properly. Ring. Romantic setting. Probably some terrible poetry I write myself. I can't wait." We danced until our feet hurt, ate way too much cake and left around midnight. On the drive home, Ethan held my hand. "Want to hear something funny?" I said. "What?" If Amber hadn't kissed Jake all those years ago, none of this would have happened. I never would have been angry enough to look into her life. Never would have learned about her probation. Never would have walked into that county building. Never would have met you. "So," he said, amused, "you're grateful to your cousin for sabotaging your relationships?" "I'm saying that sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead us exactly where we're supposed to be." "That's very philosophical for midnight." "I get philosophical at midnight." He laughed as we drove through the quiet streets. I thought about revenge and justice and unexpected love stories. I thought about the 19-year-old version of me watching her world fall apart. I thought about the woman I'd become, someone who finally fought back, even if it was messy and complicated and not entirely ethical. I thought about Ethan, who'd agreed to a ridiculous plan and ended up staying for everything after. And I thought about Amber dancing at her own wedding trying to be better. Maybe that's what growing up really is, realizing people are complicated, that revenge doesn't always feel the way you expect it to, and that sometimes the best outcome is when everyone gets a chance to move forward. Or maybe I was just tired and overthinking things. Either way, 3 months later, Ethan proposed on a hiking trail at sunset. He had a ring he'd clearly spent too much money on and a poem that was actually pretty good. I said yes without hesitation. We got married a year later. It was a small ceremony with close friends and family. Claire was my maid of honor. Ethan's brother stood beside him. And yes, Amber was invited. She came with Daniel. She behaved perfectly. No drama. No attention grabbing. She congratulated us sincerely, danced a little, and left early with her husband. The next day she texted me, "You look beautiful. I'm so happy for you." I replied with 3 simple words. "Thank you." Not friendship. Not forgiveness. Just peace. 2 people who hurt each other worked through it in their own imperfect ways and ended up somewhere better. And honestly, that was enough. Because this isn't really a story about forgiveness or redemption or life lessons. It's a story about a woman who got tired of being pushed around. A woman who fought back in an unconventional way. A woman who accidentally fell in love with her fake date. And a woman who realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just living well. So that's what I did. I lived well. I'm still living well, with Ethan, with Waffles our terrible cat, with Sunday farmers markets and Friday date nights and a life that finally feels like mine. Amber tried to take that from me. She didn't succeed. And in the end, that's the real victory. Not the hallway confrontation. Not the fear in her eyes that night. But this moment right now where I'm happy, whole, and completely myself. That's the ending I chose. That's the ending I wrote.